And helping us take a closer look at that market's activities, Anthea Gardner from Catersian Capital. Anthea, absolute pleasure. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Nalu. Not a great day in the market, though, unfortunately.
Absolutely. What is it? What exactly is driving this performance this afternoon?
It's really hard to say exactly. I think we saw some net foreign selling yesterday. So the foreigners are kind of almost some of the foreigners anyway are taking some profits, I think is what's happening. This rand, extremely volatile. It moves from 18 to 1850 or even below 18 to 1850 in the space of 48 hours. And I think it's a combination of rand weakness and dollar strength. I do think what's keeping the rand from trading weaker than 1850 against the dollar, it's about 1848 when I last checked, is probably the fact that Pinduoduo is in Sintra, Portugal at the moment. He's saying he likes the appointment of Pinduoduo as finance minister, and so everyone's believing it. And I think that is the right thing to do. The politics is definitely weighing on the rand. I think, this new oh, that joke's getting old, isn't it? Cabinet has received mixed reactions locally and globally. I think it's probably too bloated. Ramaphosa didn't take the chance to get rid of some ministers that the outside world sees as incompetent. Oh, harsh statement, but it is what it is. Many people wondering how he's going to make this cabinet work. I think optically it looks great. From an optical perspective, it really is. But in reality, they have opposing views on most things. And in all honesty, I'm really okay with them not making any big policy changes immediately. I just want them to stop the rot of corruption. But I think the market really does want to see economic growth. And it's difficult to see how you're going to get that when you can't decide on policy, or you can't even decide who's going to be in the cabinet and what posts they're going to take. So I think that's weighing on the market a bit.
It is very interesting there because in my mind, some sort of a coalition, a grand coalition between the DA and ANC was what markets had said they wanted added. So these concerns are a little bit concerning, but I guess it is human beings behind the trades. I'm also keen to get your thoughts on what we're seeing happening in Europe today. We saw Eurozone inflation out. Markets are not receiving it well.
No, they're all in Sintra at the moment, actually in Portugal, discussing policy and all sorts of things. So inflation, Eurozone inflation rose 2.5%, down from 2.6% in May, so pretty much in line with expectations and definitely inching closer to this 2% target. But I think what Christine Lagarde was saying, which is what I guess the US Fed was saying a couple of months ago, is we'll wait for the data before we make any big changes or interest rate cuts. And I think that's got the market a bit edgy. They're really hoping, because they were so positive about cutting. And it probably gives, some sort of credence to this higher for longer. That phrase is also getting really old.
Yes.
And just this wait for data, because I think the feeling was from the market that even if inflation doesn't reach its expected targets, I don't know how else to call it, given targets by the central banks, right? That the central bankers would start cutting anyway. But I don't think it's playing out the way the market has wanted it to.
Interesting also, I think we saw the ECB cutting those rates in June. Very possible that off this print, we might see a pause more than anything.
Indeed, you've summed it up perfectly, actually. Christine Lagarde's words and her her governors were really referring to the fact that there is no need for us to cut again. We've done it once. Let's see what happens.
Well, certainly all of us watching that one. Let's talk ArcelorMittal now. Quite an update today. Oh, I read there's lots and lots and lots coming out of that one. But I think really what's important there is to note that the macros are not in favor of the business. They have, however, decided to keep their longs business going, and the losses are increasing.
Significantly increasing to between 96 and 104 cents from 40 cents a year ago. Sure, that's a big loss. So it's a big change in the loss. And I think there's two things here as well that we probably need to look at. There's weak demand. Van der Bijl Park blast furnace was a problem in the first half. And then this China story, which you and I always seem to be talking
Yeah.
about, the feeling is that domestic consumption is expected to remain weak in China because of the property crisis. And even though it's kind of gone out of the headlines, it's still very much top of everyone's mind, and everyone's wondering where the growth from, or the growth in, or where steel demand is going to come from, if there's no infrastructure or property spend or growth.
I mean, that's what's on all our minds here. We know, I think, last year's budget, Anthea, we allocated about 900 million rand to infrastructure. We haven't seen that really being spent here. It is actually possible that ArcelorMittal may at some point have no choice but to go through some form of a restructure.
Yeah, that's probably a good summation of exactly what is happening. As you say, though, they've decided to keep the longs business. And they haven't really given us any indication of where they're going to trim or how they're going to restructure, have they? Unless I've missed it.
No, they really haven't. They really haven't. And then before we move on to stock picks, I also want to get your thoughts here. We do expect Fed Chair Jerome Powell out there at Sintra to make some commentary today. Are we sitting at the edge of our seats hoping that he'll say something, even though he's already said a lot?
Look, he's definitely going to say something, and we're definitely going to overanalyze.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're expecting him to say too much.
Yeah.
I think the markets, they know what he's thinking. There's nothing new going to come out of from him.
Certainly, I believe so too. And then let's get into stock picks now. But let's start off by looking at councils that have found favor with your industry peers.
Given sort of the new dawn, if I can call it that, for South Africa, if it sticks, all the activity that's going to come through, all the funding that's going to be needed, the banks are likely going to benefit from that. And I think rates have remained higher for longer, as they say. And that's going to obviously benefit their interest line. I think banks across have done generally well in maintaining their costs as well. And I think, obviously you kind of take your pick there. I think my pick in the banks would be sort of First Rand as the quality play, Nedbank as the kind of value play, if I can call it that. But I think the banks generally will do well.
We spoke about foreigners and so coming. If they do come in, I think Remgro would be one of those stocks they're going to buy. So it's about 38%, I'll call it close to 40% discount now, which I think is very enticing entry point. And the key for me is they got a lot of portfolio investments in Discovery, First Rand, Momentum, which I recently exited. And for me, that is where the opportunity lies. I think there's a lot of potential dry powder, a lot of potential corporate action. And with this rally you've seen, specifically in stocks like Discovery, as I just alluded to, they could be looking to exit these stocks now and do something with it.
TransDigm, US listed company. It's in the aerospace business. They make many different kinds of parts that go into airplanes, from the seat covers to the cockpit security to valves to all kinds of things. They would have some of their parts in any plane that you would care to fly in these days. The A320s, the 737s, the long haul flight stuff. And if you happen to be on a Black Hawk or a F-35, they'll be in there as well. It's a company that buys these other companies that produce these goods for planes that are very specialized. So 90% of their revenue is proprietary technology.
All right, keen to get your thoughts on some of those. Anthea, we've got South African banks, Remgro and TransDigm.
So I've always been a holder and buyer and a proponent of First Rand. I mean, you don't often get ROEs over 20%. Nedbank, he's not wrong, probably a good value play. I think I'd add Standard Bank to that. I know it's run hard, I know it's difficult, but they seem to have the growth. They seem to have the growth trajectory that distinguishes them from the other banks. Alex's Remgro, I think when you're buying investment holding companies in South Africa, it always feels like a bit of a hope and a prayer that the discount to NAV is going to close. And it never does it?
Yeah.
I just don't know if I want to own investment holding companies in South Africa. And then Craig's idea of TransDigm, I don't love airline companies, but this is not what it is. This is an aerospace provider, and they've got proprietary technology. I haven't had enough time to analyze it, but I wouldn't be opposed to holding some of those.
And which counter do you love this afternoon?
So we're going with Pinduoduo. This is the company that owns an e-commerce platform in China. You'll know it because it has the Temu marketplace in the US, offering a wide range of products. Whether you love them or hate them, you can't deny how they've grown. And the holding company, the actual group company, great platform provider. They've spent the money they need to, so limited capex required going forward. They've got great free cash flow, strong balance sheet, and it's not as expensive as, I mean, it's not cheap. It's trading at a 12 times forward PE for a new company, but it's not as expensive as some of the others. Amazon, for example, is over 40 times. So yeah, I think we like the fact that they've got good, strong cash and cash equivalents on their balance sheet.
Wonderful. And an absolute pleasure having you with us this afternoon, Anthea. Have a great one further. That was your Midday Markets update with Cartesian Capital's Anthea Gardner.